Anyway, so once they experienced London, it was a city of disappointment because if you remember the map that I showed you earlier, they came into London and then they went and they lived in these ethnic minority neighborhoods, and this was not the London that they had imagined. So many of them talked about London as being this divided city, the city that divided between the iconic city of London and what this image shows, the welcome to Leytonstone. This is welcome to East London, welcome to the ethnic part of town. And this is where they were staying in. So they saw themselves as separated from the success and global city status of London. So what I'm going to talk about again is how these notions of separation, alienation, aspiration, and all of that were negotiated in these particular sites that the migrants or the Polish builders were in. And the building site was perhaps one of the key sites where difference and identity and their experiences or these subjectivities were being negotiated. And the building site was interesting because on the one hand, they were white migrants. So their experience was very different from, let's say, Asian migrants or African migrants who immediately were perceived as different from their skin color. So they did suggest that it was easier for them to find jobs in building sites given that their skin color was white. But at the same time, they said that because of the language difficulties, they were often at a disadvantage. So most of them, even if they were working in other sectors and they came into London, they began work in the building sites from the lowest level, which was at the laborer level. And so then immediately you start getting to see the hierarchies that begin to emerge in terms of English-speaking workers at a higher level, at a manager level or at a supervisory level in the building sites, and the really lowest level, which is the non-English speaking Polish builders. And it was here that they began to articulate a sense of difference, which was based on the Polish builder's body being superior in being able to perform the work better than the English builder. So there was all these narratives about we have more finesse as a nation. We do better job. We are more concerned with actually cleaning up after ourselves in the job. So there were lots of narratives which I don't have the time and the scope to go through. But it was really always a valorization of the Polish body, and the valorization of the Polish body in all its dirt and the filth, which is very different from the way the Guardian article represented Piotr Dobroniak in this clean person standing outside the building site. And in there was always this notion that English was a very important language as a cultural capital, as a route to cultural capital, as a route to articulating their social mobility or allowing or encouraging their social mobility. So while in the building site, of course, there was not enough time to socialize, but they did realize that they needed to get a better grasp over English. After the day's work was over, those who were really aspiring to social mobility within the building site, who wanted to really go up the hierarchy, would go with their English colleagues to the pubs. So this particular participant, he says, I prefer English pubs, and I prefer to go to the pub with English people, because it's like a lesson for me. So I can learn English. Sometimes you can pick up 1 or 2 words, and it really helps you. So I prefer to go with English people. So in this context, English became very, very important for the participants, and particularly those participants who managed to pick up English. They became these middlemen through which the English contractors gave orders to the laborers in the site. So they were able to translate from English to Polish to the really low-level building laborers in the construction sites. But also, through this, they also articulated that although these friendships or these associations with English contractors in the building pubs was something that was quite frequent and enjoyed by them, these people could never be their friends. So one of the participants, in fact, the same person, he said that I would not invite them for my daughter's birthday party. And in fact, he gave the example of his daughter's birthday party where he invited his daughter's friends from school, and none of them actually landed up. And the only person who landed up was her best friend, who was actually African. And he cited these as continuous examples of racism in which they were, in a way, excluded from interacting with the local population or the English population, Yet at the same time, they saw these people as a very big resource in gaining English language and going up the hierarchy within the building sites. Okay, now coming to the city, and this is really the main, the point of this discussion, of this talk, is to think about London itself as this striated, or as I said earlier, as this fractured city, not this homogeneous mass of the iconic city made up by these landmarks, but as this fractured city. And many of these participants would talk about London as a city of villages. So here, there's one of the other participants, he says, well, here, Waterloo, London Bridge, you know these areas, because I used to work here cleaning in a bar for a month. There are quite nice buildings over here, but if you go a bit further, then you get depressed by these houses looking awfully, horribly similar. I thought London, huge city in comparison to Lublin. Lublin is not some big Polish city, but when I went to London, it felt old and small. I came here and the center is okay. It's clear that it's a big city, but the outskirts remind me of small villages linked by train lines. And this is a continuous narrative that goes across for all the participants. So London has the small place where it's a landmarks, but that's really something that they're excluded from. What makes up their everyday life in London is negotiating between the city of villages, negotiating from the suburbs into the central city center for work through the train lines. And this is again illustrated by, okay, sound is gone, doesn't matter. So most of the images that they took during traveling were images of train stations because they were staying in these outlying suburbs. And I'm calling them suburbs, but actually they're part of London, like East London is London. But they see them as largely suburbs, which also speaks about the way that they're imagining London is something that is outside and separate from. And I asked them, what is this image about? And he said, this is a way to somewhere. Oops, it's changing. So I said, what do you mean by way to somewhere? He said, but why I made, I just like this. I think it was, everything looks nice, like a way to somewhere, you know what I mean? Way to somewhere. And I said, I don't really understand. So I said, way to somewhere, and I questioned. He said, exactly. And now, you know, all of the London, one side, you can see the fantastic modernist buildings. And the other side, you have some poor houses, poor buildings, making a contrast. And so they really understood London as this kind of divided city. And these lines, these train lines sort of connected them to the city that they had actually aspired to. Okay, this is again, I think, one of the key reasons why they thought of London as disappointing. And this was again by one of the participants who couldn't speak English, so this was translated by my Polish interpreter. And he took quite a few images of London houses showing the rubbish in front. And he says, the next photo I wanted to talk about and present to you are these photos, actually this photo. These sites are in East London actually very common. And it is something that bothers me here, turns me against London. And I spoke with my friends who come to London. They imagined London differently. And it's different, oops. Like, you know, they land in Stansted, they come to, say, Ilford or some such eastern area, and, you know, something gets to them. And he talks about the reasons why they experience this part of London more. But first of all, of course, as I said before, because the rents are lower, so this is the place that they can afford to stay. But also if you compare their routes into London with, let's say, African migrants or Asian migrants that come through Heathrow, the Polish or East European migrants come through the low-cost airlines. And the low-cost airlines come into the outlying airports of London, which is Stansted or Luton. And through there, they can come straight into East London without getting into central London. So that route also shapes the way that, this is what the participant is saying, shapes the way that they think about London as dirty and filthy. And there are a lot of these kind of pictures of rubbish in London. And so London, again, itself is something very disappointing. And this is again said in, I think the sound will come here, I hope. This is again shown by these two brothers who are interviewed who talked about this is nothing special. And this reminded them actually not of London that they had imagined, but of Poland.
It looks like in Poland.
It's the same. It's the
same.
village station.
Yeah, like village station in Poland.
But it's not Poland.
No, it's London.
I never supposed to see that when I came to London. I hoped to see large buildings, everything clean, super. Yeah, but typical, usual, nothing special.
Yeah, in the city.
Yeah, maybe. But the outskirts of the city are the same as in Poland. There's not big difference.
No, nothing.
Nothing really special.
So this is where I think the embodied nature of it comes into play, and it's going to be reinforced by the next few slides that I'll show you, where the feelings of actually being in those places gives a very different experience of the London that they had imagined. And this is the feeling that for them then allows them to compare across national territories rather than say that they're part of London. They suggest that they feel more a part of Poland than being part of the London that they had traveled to. So just bear with me with the next ones.
Did these remind you of any other place?
Yeah, like New York.
Yeah, I'm just wondering.
Yeah, but I expect it to be bigger or something.
Here, look at here.
Yeah. I thought,
Why did you expect it to be bigger?
Because it's London, you know, the most. Yeah. When you told people from Poland that you were in London, you're like, wow, really, you were in London? How's it? But you expect something bigger, something larger, something extra. Yeah, but that's nothing special, really.
Really?
You can get used to it. When you have worked, you don't really care about that place. You care about commercials or something. Yeah. Just what? I know because I work 5 days. Yeah.
So I think in the end he articulates something quite interesting, that these things you stop caring about, which you did very much so before you came to London, where it was the symbolic West. But he says, I work 5 days, so I don't really care about it. It's now irrelevant, really, for their everyday lives in the city. And that's sort of reinforced again and again through the different pictures that they show as well. These set of pictures was one day in the evening when all these young men went out together and they had a night out in the city. So they show this, and there are lots of narratives around. There are other pictures that they took of them, but they're standing around in the bus stop drinking, and they said, I don't want you to show this picture to anyone. And I said, why? He says, well, it's because it's going to reinforce this perception that Polish people are binge drinkers, and so we don't like to represent ourselves this way. It's just that we were having fun and we took this photo. So there were lots of images like that about self-representation and so on as well.
Yes, but
yeah, I'm reaching the final few slides now. So this was, again, about everyday mobilities and about reaching work every day. And as I said, they didn't have the car all the time. If they had their if they had their contractors taking them to work, then they would go in the car. But most often, their journey was through trains or tubes. And it was about the frustration and the materiality of this everyday life that is, again, articulated about what is it about London that they understand.
yes, but do you know why I call it puff of snakes?
Why?
Yeah, you're never pissed off about the people that's going in front of you and stopping you, and especially when you must change a train and you know that you have just only 1 minute, and all of the snakes just moving slowly on the path.
Yeah.
It is fun for me.
It's frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Sometimes. Okay, it is frustrating, but we start to laugh with this. I just look on the snakes. Okay, we're going in this tempo. We start to laugh of this because it's not the point to be pissed off of this.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So, and then the final one.
To zdjęcie i to
I think I can talk over this because this is important.
przedstawia
So this is something again.
rozwój polskich sklepów w Londynie. Czyli ja patrzę z perspektywy czasu, cofam się powiedzmy 6 lat wstecz,
What did I do?
gdzie zdobycie jakiegoś polskiego produktu graniczyło z cudem, a w tej chwili jest tego wszędzie pełno. To jedno, co mnie cieszy.
Using buttons. Sorry, I did something funny. I can't do off, is it? No, I don't think. Home. Home. Using buttons. Sorry. Oh, is it showing? Okay, then it's fine. Okay, so this is the final image that I wanted to show. And this, to me, is not just so much from the perspective of the Polish builder himself, but also what it does to the materiality of the city, the material and physical landscapes of the city, which is what this particular participant, Dariusz, is talking about. So he takes this image, and I don't know if it's very clear there, but this particular shop here, it says Grodziński. And that's a Polish shop. And this is what we saw after 2004. There's this huge proliferation of Polish shops and Polish products in London. And he says, this photo shows the development of the Polish shops in London. So I'm looking from the perspective of time. I'm going back, say, 6 years, getting a Polish product bordered on the miraculous. And so now there's plenty of it everywhere. So this is the one thing that makes me happy. And Dariusz himself had come into London as an illegal migrant. Well, he came as a tourist, but he kept working. And so after 2004, their borders opened up, and he's now working as a legal contractor. And because he came earlier, he now has a language capability. So he sees himself as quite important. As you can see, he's got his own car, and he's taking the pictures from the car. And so he talks about how the presence of the Polish migrants within London itself has transformed the material and social and physical landscapes of London, which again make